So first of all, I'm gonna, thank you for taking the time, and we're gonna talk a little bit about, the new album that just debuted, the Midnight Menu. Talk about the inspiration and the sound that you wanted to give from this album, because, just from me listening to this album, it's got such a great range of genres that you can't really base it on anything, because it's, from one minute it's kind of synthy goth rock, and then one
Yeah.
minute it's kind of rocky, and then it's kind of softer. So how was that inspiration of like kind of just doing the kind of genre bending, album?
It was completely unintentional. So I wish I could take credit for it and say that, there was an intent, from start to finish. But this project was kind of an accident. It was born out of a dare, or kind of like a friend of mine prompting me, like, hey, you want to write a song together? And he's, my friend Jason Bowman, he owns a music school called the Rock Academy, which my kids are involved in. And we started playing in the adult program there, just kind of as for fun. And the timing was right for me. He had said, hey, do you want to write a song together? And I had just happened to quit my band of 25 years called Dead Z, which was, we were looped in with the new metal, but I'd say it was more gothy, industrial, new wave, back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of Dead Z, so.
Oh, nice, man. Well, we've rocked Baltimore and Pittsburgh quite a few times, so. Yeah. You obviously, I brought with me all my sounds and my tricks and tools, from that project. But, like anytime you mix it up with a new group of people, you're going to get a different product. Like there's no, like you can say this about any band. There's no group of people who could have made what we made. And it really just started with like, let's try a song. We wrote a song, and I thought, wow, this is more dynamic than I would have expected, and has some that song was called I Am. And it wasn't just like a pretty standard song with intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, re-intro. It had more parts to it that were kind of interesting and lush for me. And we pulled Mark Visconti in as well. He was a guitar player who was also in the adult program, and same as Mike Davis. But it really just started with in a living room, let's write a song. And that song came out pretty quickly, I'd say, as songs go. And then the next one came right after, which was a song called Life of a Widow. And then the songs just started to fall out of us. And before I knew it, I was like, wow, we got a lot of songs here. We had 13 tracks after 6 months. And that's something seemed a little bit special to me about it, and magical. And we went into the studio with the intention of just we'll just, record 6 or 7 songs for, friends and family, right? And ourselves, just keep it lo-fi, just, pay for it ourselves. I'll produce it, use our friend's studio. And we booked 2 days, and by the end of the 2 days, we had tracked 13 songs. And it just moved so quick that, and the product and what came out of it was really refreshing to me. And I know I'm giving a very long-winded answer to your question, but I'm just processing it now, how to think about the music and looking back at it, because it just came out,
Yeah.
And when you're in it, I don't sit and listen to the record, but now I'm maybe I just go on Spotify and just listen from start to finish. And I'm starting to see the through lines in it, and I'm starting to see why it makes sense and how it was sequenced. And although it is very genre blending and bending, it to me, there's a lot of cohesion. It makes sense. Everybody brings something very, very different to the table, and that's what you have, and that's what we ended up with. And Vera, she was the biggest surprise for me, because she has never done this before. We've been married, 20 years, and this was she very sheepishly was watching us work in the living room, from the hallway. And I said, Vera, get in here. What do you got? And she's never done this before. Never sang, really, except in the Rock Academy adult program. She, she covered a Slipknot song.
Yeah.
And, that began her journey and her love of heavy music. And she, I think, nervously came in. I put a mic in her hands and she just started to sing. A lot of some of the vocal that you hear on that track was just her in the living room with an SM57, just a microphone, just sitting there. We didn't, no headphones, just like her just kind of scatting. Same with Mark's vocal as well. That was not professionally done. A lot of that stuff that we do in the living room got dragged into like the final recording.
Yeah,
but she was the biggest surprise for me because like she just kind of came out of nowhere with it, and she's such an oddball like that, and that as you know, and I'm just so obsessed with her. She's my wife. She's my best friend, and like when you are with somebody for that long and then they are still surprising you 21 years in to your relationship, I mean, it's pretty wild, the stuff that she's got hidden inside of her. Her work ethic, and just her perspective, and what she brings is just really refreshing.
Yeah, I find that kind of interesting because I was going to ask you about that too, but the way you were kind of explaining it, that she wasn't really even originally part of the project, and then you just kind of threw her in, and I mean, it's so crazy to hear that because when you listen to her voice and just her lyrics and her vocals throughout this album, it's so very haunting and like emotional, and it's so perfect. It's like I would have never guessed. I figured it would have been like her going, "Hey, I want to do this" originally.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. It's just such a big surprise. And she was always going to be in the band. We thought, because she's a great piano player, she was just going to like play some keys, We hadn't really defined who was going to be the lead singer. It just had never really been discussed, and it just worked out that way. And Jason's wife, Acacia Ludwig, is a good friend, and she helped and she contributed with some of the lyrics as well. And her and Vera have a very, very tight, amazing, like working relationship.
Yeah, and then I like too because it also, she brings a lot of her, her like her family, from Ukrainian, a lot of Ukrainian folklore into the lyrics, and then obviously with the name being the Yagas, was that always kind of like the plan to basically name the band the Yagas?
No, again, it was like an accident, a happy accident. I don't know. You know how hard it is to find a band name now? Yeah. Everything's been used. Everything's copywritten. Everything's trademarked. You think of something, you're like, that's the one. And then you go and you check, Apple Music or Spotify, and you're like, there's 7 bands with that name. Oh, okay. And we went back and forth for like 6 months, and like trying to find something. We stumbled upon some cool stuff. It didn't quite fit. And, Vera had, as you know, this folkloric, Baba Yaga story that had been told to her by her uncles by her one uncle rather, when she was a kid. To like get them to go to sleep, and they'd tell them stories about, Baba Yaga, right? Not to necessarily scare the kids or anything, but like, that's the most common like perception of Baba Yaga, is that she like fries and eats children, right? And she accompanies the Grim Reaper on his journeys to like, collect souls. She's a shapeshifter, right? She sometimes is a helper. Sometimes she's a seductress. Sometimes she is a spellcaster, and the name fit for us, certainly as we started to unfold the music and we started to see how different one song was from the next. And the name fit accidentally, I think, because of the nature of who Baba Yaga is, a shapeshifter. And it felt like it gave us permission to dip into different genres and to present different versions of ourselves, if you will. Because, I have a metal side, but I also have like a big new wave side. Vera hears most things as a waltz, just because of a lot of the Ukrainian music that she grew up learning and listening to and dancing to. She was a professional Ukrainian folk dancer. And so her repertoire, what she brings to it was totally refreshing. Not to mention the melodies that she brings in that are just slightly skewed. They're not quite, standard American, rock and roll melodies. And it all just kind of works. And by the way, sometimes it doesn't work. I don't mean with this band, but like sometimes you get together with people and it's shit, and you have all these expectations. And you're like, oh my God, I'm working with this person who's amazing, who's known for this and that, and it didn't turn out, And you hear stories like that all the time about like whether it's like Limp Bizkit hiring Eddie Van Halen to come in and do a solo, and they end up throwing it in the trash. These things happen all the time. So when that alchemy does exist, and when there is that chemistry, you have to grab it. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Well, with that too, even just piggybacking on that, was there any because of obviously with everybody who knows Vera from her acting career, was there any little bit of fear of putting out this album about maybe it deflecting against her acting career because people were like, oh, it's another actor just trying to make music or something like that,
So. How do I answer this? No. Vera and I we don't really give a fuck. That's the thing. Like, we're just doing our thing, when you get a little older, you get to a point in your life and you're kind of like, I'm just doing my thing, like at some point you start to care, and that's the beauty of age, is that you start to care less and less what people think.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to do this so that we could compete on, with Linkin Park and Evanescence and be considered at that table, right? Yeah. To have a seat at that table. So the fact that it happened at all, like with Metal Hammer, twice putting us up, because they have their songs of the week, right? And they twice, pitched us, put us up against huge bands. We won one of them, So that was a little surprising because we never had any intention of I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but we don't have a label. We don't have any infrastructure. It's all out of pocket. It's all roll up your sleeves, and we're going to keep it that way. We're doing it just because this is what we need to do for ourselves, and as a band, just make some music, and what happens to it after we make it is kind of none of our business. Of course, there's going to be people who are going to be like, nope, actors aren't, they should stay in their lane. They shouldn't be making music. I don't know why musicians transition easily or more easy into acting. Yeah. This seems to be a little bit more accepted, but I will say this, the critical response and, for Vera going from acting to music has been across the board incredible. I haven't seen any anything kind of speaking out against it. So, and I expected there would be some, but I haven't seen any. So,
yeah, that's good. Like I said, just from listening to the full album, man, it's just such a her vocals are just like I said, they're haunting, but in a good way. And it's just it's one of those ones where you don't really, like I said, you her from this and from that, and it's wow, it's cool to see another side, that hey, this is that. And I love the fact that you guys were just who gives a shit whether or not anybody likes it. And like I said, I mean, to be completely honest, I think this album is an amazing album. I think it just needs to be out there a lot more. And like I said, I mean, granted, yes, you're going to get a little bit of those people who might be a little hypocritical because of her, her acting career and stuff like that. But, oh yeah, they're just, they're where they're at because of that. And it's it's a lot harder.
Well, look, we did a slow rollout. We put a song out, and I think that it was hard to get attention in the beginning. Yeah. But that's more I think nobody wants to be early on liking something, right? Very few people are willing to take risks now, and be I'm jumping on board early on this. This is good, People wanted to see and hear more from us, which I totally respect. We had to earn our stripes, with getting that attention. We first put out the song called The Crying Room, and then we waited through the holidays. We were going to put the second song out, but then, the fires happened in LA, and we had a lot of friends going through that. And it just felt like a weird time to push the next single out. So we waited, 6 weeks or so. And I think, there was a big gap of time between the two releases. And I think that in order to get people to really come to the table and pay attention to what you're doing, I think they want to see that it's more than like just one song, right? That people wanted to make sure like this isn't just Vera in her off time because there's an actor's strike, making a song.
Yeah.
No one wants to be early on that. And now that we put out 3 singles, we, worked it the way I guess a label would work a record and drop the album. And the response has been incredible. I'm so proud of it. It's the first time I ever produced something, so there was a little bit of anxiety for me about that. But, just because like, man, it's so easy to judge people these days, and to be, I don't know. I thought that maybe some things would get picked apart, but like, so far, like gearheads and music nerds and engineers have accepted it and been like, cool, and dig the production.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that works very well too, because of the fact that she can do both very well, and with that, and then with that single, that not only is that song just an awesome, epic, just gothic love song, sort of, to a point. But it's but also with the visual of, just the haunting in the woods and things like that, it worked very well with her being able to work a camera and be able to, sing such a haunting song.
Yeah, we have a really great group of friends who are in the film industry who were just willing to work for very little money and to show up on weekends when they should have been with their kids so that they could help us, make these videos, and that's the great thing that Vera can bring to this, is that she's at the end of the day, she's a storyteller.
Yeah.
No matter what you put in front of her, whether it's going to be the theater or it's going to be film, television, music, or a blank canvas, she's going to make something. Right? That's the thing. She's going to tell a story. And I think that that's what she would refer to herself as, more than a singer, as a storyteller. And the marriage of those visuals with the recordings, it was just like magic for us. It was like chocolate and peanut butter. It just works. And that's look, I'll be totally frank. That's something that we can do. But something that's going to be harder for us to do is going on tour, and we all have kids. We've all got families and careers. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for us to, bring the music to everybody. And the easiest way for us to do that is through visuals and through online, obviously. So, but we are trying to make space and an opportunity to travel and to bring the music to as far away as we can. There's been a lot of requests from overseas and South America, Mexico, Australia, so on and so forth. So it would be good to try to put some little small tours together.
Yeah,
we missed the window on the festivals, unfortunately. So maybe next year that would be a really good opportunity for us to bring the music to people.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Do you guys have any plans for touring or doing anything like that for, just because, a lot of times, a lot of bands, especially with their, with their album, you kind of want to tour on that and kind of get the moment. Do you have any plans for this year that you can discuss?
There's going to be some one-off shows. I'm not sure yet. We're still kind of working through that. Maybe something in LA. Maybe another East Coast thing. It would be nice to do a little East Coast or West Coast 2-week leg. That would be great. We're dying to get out there and play. Yeah. Dying, right? We've only played 2 shows live.
Oh, man.
But we have rehearsed religiously for the last six months or so, or longer, since we meet up kind of without fail every week and rehearse.
Yeah.
But we're dying to do it. We're just sifting through the possibilities at this point.
Yeah, especially when it comes to that too, with the touring and stuff like that. That kind of almost solidifies, yes, we are real. This isn't a gimmick. This isn't a pet project. This is something that we're passionate about. And like I said, I've seen especially like I said with the acting side. I've been, I went and seen Princess Goes, which was, Michael C. Hall's from Dexter's band, and like,
Yeah. What do you think of it?
Oh, it's so great. Like I was on board. I mean, granted, yes, when because I got, for me being pressed, I got, the advanced album of that, and I was like, and I already knew about his, singing career. A lot of people who don't know him, obviously the Broadway and things that he did, but I was like, granted, yes, Dexter is gonna bring in the people, but that band is an amazing band and just such an awesome band to see live. And I think when people saw them live, they were like, oh shit, this isn't, Eddie Murphy's My Girl Wants to Party All the Time kind of shit.
Which by the way was a great song.
Oh yeah.
When I was a kid, I was like, hell yeah, I love.
Oh yeah,
I loved Eddie Murphy. Any bit of Eddie Murphy I could get, I would take.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Michael C. Hall and Vera had the same manager, so we're very familiar with his band, and and also what he did with the Bowie thing, the Lazarus, or is it Black Star? Right? Sorry.
Black Star, yeah.
Yeah. Lazarus is the song that I love the most. That's on that album. Yeah, no, he's incredible. He's incredible. Like, I don't think that one should be limited to one art form. Yeah. Painters should sing, singers should paint. I mean, there are no rules here, right? Yeah. There shouldn't be. I don't think. Is it another character for Vera? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's just another role. Yeah. Why not? But it's an expression of her, and it's something that comes from very deep within her. Yeah. There's a lot of like generational like stuff coming out too. Like being Ukrainian and like this, and a lot of themes of grief. Yeah. and love. A lot of love in that album. That's what I hear. Yeah. When I listen back to it, when I hear like abundant love, I hear unrequited love, I hear grief, which is the absence of love. It's the death of love. So to me, not that you asked, but I am just at this point in my life, or having the album out now for 4 days, where I am reflecting a lot on it. Like, what does this mean, right? And I guess I'm also planning for what the next one will be, which I. Wrapping my head around that. Sometimes you don't know until you're finished, right? Like painters oftentimes can't title something until it's done. Can't name a baby until it's born, right?
Yeah.
I think I always thought it was strange. People were like, what's your baby's name? Like in the belly. Like, oh yeah, it's Bob, right? Like, how do you know that's a Bob?
Yeah.
But you gotta see his eyes first. Oh man. So
yeah, for sure. And then so this question I got, but it's kind of like a 2-part question, because I know so the first part of it, and then I'll ask the second one. Do you watch Vera's movies and stuff like that? Are you a fan of? Because I know some people don't really like to watch like their spouses or their own movies.
That's I'm look. My first love was film. Mm-hmm. I've studied film. I wanted to be in film in any capacity that I could. I went to school for filmmaking. I can suspend disbelief. I can watch her in a movie and totally forget that she's my wife. Mm-hmm. And I'm a huge fan of hers to begin with. So like, I can totally like compartmentalize our personal life and watch her on the screen. Certainly some things are more difficult to watch than others. But to answer your question, yes, I do love it. Yes.
So since you do, has there been a favorite role? I mean, I'm not necessarily a favorite movie, but maybe a favorite character of hers that she's played that you've always loved?
I think Norma Bates, Bates Motel, and of course Lorraine Warren. I think but I think she was able to really showcase a lot more with Norma Bates, and Lorraine. She just is a very specific thing. There's a lot of restraint there, a lot of restraint in that character. Norma was all over the place, and I love that. I love that, and I know that there was a lot of. She worked really, really hard on that. We uprooted the family. We moved to Vancouver for her to do that. And they worked really long hours. They worked oftentimes. If you watch that movie, there's a lot of nighttime shots, and it's raining and it's dark and it's, outside of the city where we lived, which was Vancouver. So she was traveling a very, very long way to get there. And she had two very, very young kids at home, And so, it was a lot of work. And I think that it was very worth it. I mean, it was worth it, just like the payoff of it, I think what she got out of that. So,
yeah. I mean, that would definitely be my favorite, is her playing Norma Bates. I mean, like I said, obviously I love, Lorraine Warren just because but like you said, that's a real character. So you got to be kind of where, at least with Norma, she can kind of go where she needs to go.
But I'll tell you something. I've never told anyone this publicly. I fell in love with her in a movie she did called 15 Minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
And she was just this, playing this Czechoslovak, Czech girl with the red hair, and I saw it in the theater. I was like, oh my god, I'm just madly in love with her. And this is what's interesting. Cut to years later, I meet her. We start our relationship. Okay, I had no idea that was the same girl. I didn't make the connection. Never made the connection until after she and I had started to see each other. And that's my wife in a nutshell. She has this amazing ability to kind of like fly under the radar and just pop up and do these things where she's almost unrecognizable from one thing to the next. And I guess this is another version of that, right? Her as a front woman to a rock band. So,
Yeah. And like I said, before when you were talking about it, I was a huge Dead Sea fan and stuff like that. So, when you were doing that, how cool was it to work on that project and work with people like Jay Gordon and Jonathan Davis?
So Jay originally, I'll just say quickly, he was the original, he was like a bass player for Dead Sea before he made the Orgy record. I don't know if that was ever known, but then, so Dead Sea was around and working, making the record with a producer named Josh Abraham, who is, great. We were all kind of coming up together, right? And when Jay went off to go do his own thing, which was Orgy, like Dead Sea had already made the record, right? But it wasn't. But we were locked up in like limbo with the label. And Jay was able to get his record like recorded and out before we ever got out. So it was kind of like. There's an interesting thing to think that like everyone would make a comparison, like that we were almost like a diminutive like Orgy. Like Orgy came first, and then it was Dead Sea when we had been around much longer at that point. But that's neither here nor there. That's water under the bridge. It's been 25 plus years. John Davis, thank God for him. Without him, we wouldn't have had anything. We we were on. First Sire Records and then Sire Electra, and then that got bought out by Warner Brothers, and we just were in this like, in the wash, just like trying to get the record out, and it had been recorded at that point for like 3 or 4 years. We finally got off the Warner Brothers deal, and we did a showcase at the Viper Room. And every label was there, and at the end of the day, we ended up doing a deal it was a co-venture deal between John Davis and DreamWorks. And because of Jonathan and his love of the band and his just like belief in us, we were able to finally get the record out and go back in the studio and record, because some time had passed. And, that's when we went and did Gramercy Park, and Jonathan sang on that song, which was great. And then he brought us on tour. Like, he did every single thing he said he was going to do, and he always supported us like through thick and thin. So, God bless him.
Yeah, that's what was funny, because like I remember seeing you with, seeing the band play with those kind of guys, but you kind of got labeled into the Korn nu metal scene, which I thought, like, even Orgy, I would never consider Orgy a nu metal band either. So like Korn, okay, Korn's definitely nu metal, but I was like, it was so weird whenever I was gonna say, like, what was your opinion on like them kind of like thinking that you were a nu metal band?
I don't think it was like we were labeling at the time, like kind of like when grunge was happening, like there was a thing happening, and then someone was like, it's grunge, or like, same as like late 70s, early 80s. New wave was just a term that Seymour Stein came up with to describe Talking Heads and Blondie, and the Cars. So I think that we were part of an LA music scene which was really diverse, right? It went everything from like Static X to like Limp Bizkit to Linkin Park to Korn, Deftones, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And those were our boys, and that's who we toured with. And I think that we fell under the banner of nu metal because of that, because those were our friends. I mean, we only got any one of our tours was because like Jonathan would call and be like, "You guys want to go on tour with us?" And we'd be like, "Yeah, sure." We'd wrap up a tour and then we get a call from like, Deftones. "You guys want to come out?" "Sure." Like that's just how it went. And, what are the big 5 nu metal bands? There's like Korn, Deftones, I guess Slipknot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think Slipknot was a little bit. To me, I think Slipknot was that end of the nu metal era. Like their first album was kind of nu metalish because of Corey kind of doing the rap kind of more style to it. But yeah, definitely. But yeah, Deftones, Korn.
Limp Bizkit,
things like that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Head PE, but they were kind of like on the lower end of the.
I liked them. I think we played a couple shows with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like I said, I love that era. Like I said, I was born in '79, so I'm like an '80s kid, but kind of like that late early '90s was like into it. So I was really into that stuff. But yeah, that's like. It's weird. It's just weird whenever people like kind of categorize people into other stuff, and that's I said even with the Yagas, where it's like people will say that it's dark wave synth goth, and I'm like, yeah, two maybe a couple of songs, but then there's also some hard rock and some almost post punk kind of grungy kind of sound to it.
Yeah. It is really it's all over the map, and I don't. To be honest with you, I listen to the songs and I'm like, okay, so this song would work on, K-Rock. This song would work on more of like a metal station, it's really hard to know like where to park everything. I'll leave that to the world to figure out if they bother to.
Yeah.
I can't control that. I just make what we make, and maybe it starts to make sense when we make another record and just keep going, and people, because by the way, as press has come out, I have seen so many different labels for this. It's like alt metal, industrial thrash, goth, psychedelic metal. I've seen nu metal again. And I'm like, really? This is not nu metal.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some crunch to it that's got that, but like, I don't know. I would describe it as like, somewhat industrial, but not really, because everything's quite analog, in fact, that we're doing, and everything's real. There's very, very little programming or sequencing. And that's also, I think, represented well on the record, that like, those are real cats playing. There's not a lot of like overdubbing. That's like when you hear the bass and the guitar and the drums together, they're all tracked simultaneously.
Yeah.
And that's, people don't do that anymore. They just don't do that. So, and then a lot of the keyboards and the vocals I do afterwards with Vera at home, just because that's where she's most comfortable. And to be honest with you, I'm a very slow player. I'm not like, you can't just throw me into like a band and be like, all right, Renn, play in the key of whatever. It's just not who I am, right? I need to be alone, and I need to sift through a lot of shit to arrive at what I like. And I usually can't do that until the vocals are down, and because I don't like, sometimes like a synth melody can be very dominating and almost try to dictate what the vocals should do, and I don't like to do that. I like to give Vera more of a blank slate, and then I kind of dance around her. Once she's done her thing, I feel like everything she needs to support the vocal. So it'll be interesting to see where this falls, if there was a radio station like between these two radio stations, maybe that's where we go, right? We'll see if it even gets to the radio. I don't even know. I think you have to have like a lot of money for that.
Yeah, especially with nowadays, it's like, it's tough. Like you were saying, you're not on a big label. so you know everything's all DIY. So it's like, you know, it's tough for bands like that to you know, to survive in a world.
Yeah, I think that's the next level of, like, you know, if you'd had like a real marketing team and money, like they would be paying your way to get on the radio, at least making sure that you know, using their connections to get in front of those DJs, right?
Yeah.
I like right now, what are you going to do? Like try to like DM somebody and be like, hey, I mean, I'm sure they get 1,000 of those a day, right?
Yeah.
You know, how do you prioritize that? And by the way, there's so much great music out there. I'm just through making this record and putting it out, and then like Spotify tells me like, oh, I think you'll also like this, you know, based on your own band. And then like present to me a bunch of like really cool bands and that I don't know the names of, but like, you know, I hear all these songs. I'm like, these are really great, you know? And there's a lot of them out there, a lot of really talented people. So, you know, you just hope that it all kind of bubbles to the surface and finds its way out.
Yeah, yeah, especially because nowadays it's so, like, even me, like I make my own music, and I pretty much just do it all through my phone on GarageBand to just make the melodies and the beats. And,
Amazing.
And it's so crazy that you can just, you know, you don't need. I mean, granted, yes, it helps to have a better recording studio because the sound quality of it's a better. But even the stuff that I put out, you know, people will go, "Oh my God, you recorded that on a phone?" Like, with, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like, that's crazy that you have that kind of production value from an iPhone.
You know what's interesting though? Like, I think at the end of the day, a good song people will forgive production if something is if they're responding to something in the music. Like, you know, why is old timey music still so popular? Because if it was all based on production quality, you would think that would all go in the garbage, right?
Yeah.
You know, some of that stuff is really very different sounding. You know, like in terms of just how it's produced, right? It's just sounds so lo-fi and muddy. You know, go back and listen to like Jethro Tull.
Yeah,
it is such weird production. His vocals are so dry, and there's no high end at all on those songs. But you don't pay attention to it because the songs are so cool and weird and great. You know, you're not like picking apart the production of it. So yeah, I think, look, whether you have a 4-track or you have, you know, an incredible studio to work in, I think it's important you just keep making it and just getting it out. That's all that matters.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before I let you go, is there anything you know, you want to say to the fans and, you know, people who want to know more about the Yagas?
Yeah, that I haven't already said in this call. Nothing totally new and fresh, other than like, I just hope everybody enjoys it, and I hope that everybody, look, the old school part of me just wants people to digest it as an album, you know, and not like scrub through it, you know. And but I think it really makes a lot of sense from start to finish.
Yeah.
I think that there's a journey there that was almost kind of like a ghost in the machine, you know, like it wasn't intended to be there, but it's there, and it's from start to finish. It just feels like a very cohesive thing, you know, and it feels like there was a lot more intention put into it, and I just hope that everyone gets to experience that same thing.
Oh yeah, like I said, yeah, like you were saying, it's definitely a very good journey because there's so many themes and different emotions, and, you know, depression and you know, just sadness and then happiness and joy. It's so many different emotions whenever you're listening to this album. And yeah, like you said, it's definitely one you need to listen from beginning to end because it does take you on a journey.
Yeah, you know, it's that's the other interesting thing about my wife is, like, you know, what she brings to this as an actor. You know, she's not precious about, you know, her takes. You know, she'll give a performance, and then the director could say, like, try this one, and she'll like let go of it, and she'll do it completely different. She's the same thing recording music. Mm-hmm. She just is fearless, and she's not precious about any of it. She'll just try things and take direction, like, and just pivot. It's really wild. What she does do that's kind of interesting, and I had to adjust to, is that she doesn't like to comp. She doesn't like to like punch in just like a word or a phrase. She likes, if I'm like, I want to get that one word better, she'll be like, well, bring it back from the top. I need to get the whole thing.
Yeah.
So for her, it's how she executes. Like most of the time when you hear a long phrase, like it's, an entire verse, it's straight through. It's not comped at all.
Yeah.
And also just again in the things that she is singing about, the content of the lyrics, she's fearless, man. Fearless.
Oh, yeah.
She's a cool gal to share your life with.
I can imagine. Like I said, yeah, I just love it because it's like you were saying, even with with some of the themes, I like that she's basically like, I don't really care what you think. This is me up front, and I'm gonna talk about these topics, even though some of these topics might be not the greatest topics. People don't want to talk about mental issues, or they don't want to talk about like the stuff that's going on in Ukraine and stuff like that. But she's like, this is who I am, and I'm gonna talk about it. So I love that fearlessness about it.
Yeah, I think it gives. Look, that's the stuff I responded to when I was young. Like really heartfelt, like raw lyrics.
Yeah.
Things that grabbed me. And she's, we've found a very loyal fan base. Largely made up of girls who like kind of needed this. I don't mean to sound like self-important or anything, but like I gotta say, man, like these Yagis, these diehard Yaga fans, these mostly girls, just really, really responded to Vera's voice and to the content of what she's singing about.
Yeah.
I get emotional when I'm listening to it. It's like, man, it fucks me up.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see like the your guys' fan base being a little bit more on the female side, just because of her just the lyrics and stuff like that, kind of like reduring, basically kind of like how like how they feel and stuff like that. So I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, go online. You see these Yagi girls. They're I say girls just because they're mostly girls, but they're amazing. They're just so supportive and encouraging.
Awesome.
So
yeah. Well, I hope, like I said, hopefully, you have guys play somewhere on the East Coast soon, and
yeah, for sure.
I definitely like to come up and see a show, just because, like I said, I like listening to albums and stuff like that, but I'm a live person, and like I said, I just feel like your guys' band is one of those bands that's like, I'm a huge fan of the band Cold.
Yeah, I know Cold. Yeah,
yeah, I'm a huge fan of Scooter, and it's like one of those ones where like you don't really expect to it, but you go to that show, his show, and because of his lyrics and just him, you end up crying. And I feel like, but it's like, why am I crying in a metal show or a rock show? But it's one of those things that's very therapeutic. So I feel like, when
I think you're a lot like me in that way. I'll be honest with you, I don't cry over like sad shit. I cry over like beautiful stuff. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like I get emotional sometimes where I'm just like at a movie theater. I'm like, what? Why am I'm like fucking crying here?
Yeah.
I got my headphones on, I'm walking down the street listening to music, and I'm crying. It's weird. It's pretty wild. And by the way, feel free to edit me as much as possible because I am a motor mouth.
Oh, so, no, you're good. I'm the same way too, man. If I've done interviews before even with people that I don't really know that well, and like if they're doing a music project or something like that. I've talked to some guy like that had no idea who it was for like 3 hours, and I'm like, holy shit, we're talking for 3 hours now, and I didn't think that we would even talk for like 15 minutes because I didn't know very much about him. But I'm such a like I said, especially because I'm like when it comes to certain music projects and stuff like that, like I said, I mean, with this album, like in all honesty and truth, it's such a great album. Like I was so like I said, granted, yes, the whole bringing me to this album was like, oh cool, this is a project from Vera. I love Vera. Right. I love her work. I love her, I love her stuff. I love the fact that we saw her sing that Slipknot shit on live, and people were like, "Oh my god, this is pretty cool." And then it's like, okay, that'll get me through the door, and it's like, okay, yeah, but I mean, there's been a ton of, like I said before, there's been a ton of actors and people who have made albums, and I'm like, okay, they got a song or two that were all right, but the album in general didn't really speak to me. This album, I love. Like I said, I think it's one of the best albums I've heard in the last couple of years.
Jesus, thank you.
Yeah, like truly, and I know people probably go, oh yeah, he's a press guy, so he's just trying to plug it up and go. I'm like, nah, like I'm always that way too. Like if I like something, I like something. I like, I mean, whether it's visually and stuff like that. It's like when it comes to music, I'm such a stickler to certain things that if I honestly don't like your music, I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm not gonna be an ass about it, but I'm gonna be like, okay, whatever. But it's like there's like I said, there's just certain ones, and like I said, and I wasn't really quite expecting it. Like I said, I knew from that, like I said, that first single, I was like, okay, this is what it's gonna get into. But then, like I said, with the multitude of different ways, different songs and stuff like that, I was like, oh my god, this is like it's been a while since I've listened to an album from beginning to end that I truly like enjoyed.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny because I listened to it today because I had to go on a very, very long walk, and I put it on my headphones, and it goes by really quick. I'm like, that's it? And we have so many more songs to record. We've already tracked like 4 new ones.
Oh,
we have
nice.
3 that we didn't use from for this record just because we thought we'd save them, and we have so many more to record. So
before leaving and stuff like that, and if you can talk about it with the newer songs that you're making, is there a possibility that we might hear Vera's voice doing like a Slipknot-y kind of song where it's a lot more heavier screaming?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I think you're gonna get a lot, man. She's only gonna I think push more boundaries.
Oh, nice.
Sure. I don't think she's gonna be like.
Well, yeah.
Cannibal Corpse. But by the way, I saw Cannibal Corpse and Meshuggah the other night.
Yeah.
Oh my God! If Meshuggah's coming to your area, you have to go see the show.
Yeah. My buddy did the show in Pittsburgh the other day. Like he covered it. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of both of those bands. So it's like those guys' freaking shows are insane.
Did he report back? What did he say about it?
Yeah, he loved it, and because he did the review for our website and stuff like that for that. So because we got press for that tour, so.
Yeah, it was pretty. I gotta tell you, man, pretty life changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool, man.
Well,
I appreciate your enthusiasm about the record, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, definitely, sure. Like I said, hopefully, down the line, if you guys do any East Coast, I mean, even like I said, even me being in Baltimore, New York's not that far of a drive, so I'd be willing to go to New York to see you guys play. So.
Yeah, we just did Bowery Ballroom.
Yeah.
But maybe again soon. Yeah, why not?
Awesome. Well,
we're dying. All right.
Well, thanks for taking the time again, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay.
Hey, man, you have a good one. Yep.